This video will show you how to remove the front and rear springs on 2009 to 2018 Ram 1500s.
All right, to kick things off, I'm going to show you guys how to uninstall your factory strut here on our front driver's side. Now, of course, you want to get your wheel out of the way. That's step number one. We're supported on a lift, but if you're working on the floor, make sure you have a floor jack properly supporting the weight of the vehicle. Moving on from there, we'll have to disconnect the ABS lines from the knuckle and from the brake line itself, just to make sure that when the knuckle drops down out of the upper control arm, we're not putting too much stress on those brake lines. All right, so for this ABS line, just follow it down to the back of your knuckle here. That's connected with a plastic clip. Just gonna wiggle that back and forth till it pops up. Now you wanna follow that guy up to the top here. That's connected to your brake line. That you're just gonna pull apart just like that. Now we have more slack on our brake lines, so we're not putting tension on them. Next up, grab a 16mm deep socket, and we're gonna remove the factory nut off of our sway bar end link. All right, set that aside. All right, next up, we're gonna disconnect our tie rod end. Now, before we get started, you wanna know that this is a 21mm nut. Now, in some cases, if you use an impact gun on this, the entire stud will spin in that ball joint. You may need a 10mm socket and a 21mm wrench to get the nut off while holding that stud steady. For our first time, I'm gonna use our 21mm deep socket in my air gun to get this guy off. All right, so ours didn't give us any trouble, but that is still worth noting. Now, before I take this guy out, I'm actually gonna leave it in and just put that nut a couple of threads on just to keep the entire hub assembly from rotating while tackling the upper control arm. All right, so next we're gonna do the upper control arm to the knuckle. Now, Ram uses a castle nut here, which has these open gaps all the way around, and through one of the gaps, going through the stud itself, is a metal retaining pin. We're gonna use needle nose pliers to pull that pin straight out. All right, set that aside. Now for this, I'm gonna use an 18mm ratcheting wrench. I highly recommend picking up a set of ratcheting wrenches for this install. There's a lot of different aspects of this that ratcheting wrenches will be a lot easier to use. All right, so once we broke that loose, I can back this off with my hand. Now, big thing to remember is we have to dislodge the ball joint from the knuckle. You can see that this stud didn't break free with that. So I'm gonna leave this nut on a couple of threads. We're gonna grab our hammer and we're gonna swing and tap against here to dislodge that. And then we'll use a pry bar to pull it down and take our nut off. Now for this, you're gonna grab a ball peen hammer and we're gonna tap right up against the side here of the knuckle. With that dislodged, you'll see that the upper control arm moves freely in there. Let's take our nut off. Once you have the castle nut and spacer out, set those aside. All right, so from here we can go back to the tie rod end, take that nut off, lift the tie rod end out. I like to hang it up over that sway bar end link and then put our nut back on the stud just so we don't lose it. Here we can lift the upper control arm out of the knuckle. And what I like to do is just grab the upper control arm castle nut and thread it right back on again so we don't lose it, just like the tie rod end. All right, next up, we're gonna tackle the bottom strut bolt, holding it to the lower control arm. Now, the nut here, I'm gonna use a 15/16 deep socket on my impact gun, and I'm gonna use a 21mm wrench to hold the bolt head on the inside. At this point, you can grab a ball peen hammer and just tap the end of that to pop it through. Some cases, you may be able to pull it straight out. If not, you can grab a flathead screwdriver and just stick it in there and hammer the back end of that. All right, so now we can focus on the top three strut tower nuts. Now grab a 15mm wrench, and I'm gonna use again the 15mm ratcheting wrench. Again, this really comes in handy. We're gonna loosen up these three top nuts. All right, so now our strut is free. I'm gonna use a pry bar here between the lower control arm and the strut body at the bottom to pry this guy out of position. All right, to kick off the uninstall in the rear, we've got our Ram up in the air, and I have 2 pole jacks supporting our rear axle. Now, if you're working on the ground, you'll want a hydraulic jack under the pumpkin or the differential, or you can put 2 hydraulic jacks, one on both sides of the differential. Now, that's gonna help support the weight. As we disconnect some suspension components, that's gonna hold that up, and then we'll slowly lower both sides down to release the tension on the spring in order to insert our leveling kit. Now, with that out of the way, I have an 18mm ratcheting wrench, which is gonna go a long way to help us get this off. And I also have a 1/4" ratchet with an 8mm socket. I'm gonna first focus on disconnecting our sway bar end link. Now, I'm not gonna disconnect the side connecting it to the frame. I'm gonna disconnect the sway bar from the end link. That's an 8mm nut. Now, the reason I have both of these in my hand is because once I start loosening this up, the entire stud likes to spin. To get around that, I'm gonna put my 18mm ratcheting wrench on our nut here, and I'm gonna put the 8mm socket on the end to hold the stud steady. And then I'm gonna loosen this guy up. That way, stud stays still and we can get the nut off. For the rear with a solid rear axle, you're gonna do both sides at the same time. Take it off by hand. Now what I like to do is once that's disconnected, pull the end link out. What I like to do is just put the nut on the end just so we don't lose it. So now we're gonna do this on the other side. All right, and with that other side out of the way, the sway bar is free, you can swing that down. Next up, we're gonna disconnect our panhard bar. Now the panhard bar connects the axle to the frame. So it's connected to the axle on our driver's side and the frame on the passenger. So we only have to do one side. Just gotta get it disconnected from one or the other. So I'm gonna start here. Now this bolt goes all the way through and has a nut on the other side with a tab. So because of that tab, we're not gonna need to hold the nut side. That'll hit the frame and hold itself. So I'm gonna use a 21mm socket to get this guy off. So the nut came off. There we go, and that's free. All right, now on the opposite side of our coil spring is our shock. We need to disconnect the shock from the bottom here where the 21mm bolt goes through. Now I've got a 21mm wrench holding on our nut and my 21 socket on the bolt head side. All right, so now we can just repeat that on the other side to tackle the shock bolt. All right, at this point, the only thing keeping this axle up right now are these 2 pole jacks. Now again, if you're working on the ground, you'll have a hydraulic jack most likely. If that is the case, this is the part where we're gonna start decompressing. So we're gonna slowly lower these pole jacks down one by one to evenly bring this down and decompress our spring. Now again, if you're using that hydraulic jack, don't send it. You wanna make sure you're going very slowly decompressing it. Otherwise, these things can get a little violent shooting out of their spot. So slowly decompress and then we'll pop the spring off. So I do a couple of turns on one side, because now this is uneven. I'll do the other side and kind of bring it down incrementally. All right, once it starts decompressing, you'll start to hear a little bit of creaking coming from the coils. That's letting you know it's close to fully decompressed, and you just saw it fall out. So this guy's completely loose, and we're good to bring her down. Same thing on the other side. Once you can twist it, there's no more pressure or tension on it. So now at this point, we're just bringing it down low enough that we can get the spring actually out. All right, there you have it. All right, next step here, we're gonna get our spring out of place. And that rubber isolator at the top looks like this. Just wanna make sure that's still here.
Thanks for watching, and remember, for all things Ram, keep it here at AmericanTrucks.com.